Number two is that introspective nature of things is, so we know the rules, we need to know ourselves. Everybody at Horizon Recruitment knows that if you come to me or any one of our account managers with a candidate, the first thing that we're going to ask you is, well, what does the candidate want? Because someone might have the skills to do a job, but if they don't want to do that job within that set of circumstances, doesn't make sense. First question is, what does that candidate want? So I'd ask you, what do you want? And the place that I would suggest starting is, and everybody wants both of these things, is do you want work-life balance or you want career progression? If you want to think about that in a little bit of a different way is, do you want time or money? And it's not, everyone wants both of those things. It's the degree to which you want both of those things that matters. And yes, that shifts over the time that you spend working. And it's a conscious choice. But it can be the root of where things can start to go off the rails in a lot of situations. So how important is work to you? How much non-work time do you need or want? I have a friend who just had his third kid. His time demands are different than it was just him and his wife. It's a reality for a lot of us. I've got 2 kids as well. I know this, the demands that having kids and getting them to soccer practice puts on us. So is work-life balance BS, or can it be achieved? And I believe it can be achieved based on what you want, and it's a matter of making that conscious choice. And I think thinking through this process and looking at this scale and going, okay, where am I today? And then continually taking that into account over the course of your career. I talked about the Indeed happiness survey at the beginning of the presentation. There's 5 things they look at, and here's where they are ranked according to Indeed, and work-life balance was number 1. I don't know if you guys can read that, but compensation is number 5. But it varies depending on the individual. The next thing in knowing yourself is consciously understanding what stage of my career am I in. Just like a company is founded and grows and then goes into decline, careers do the same thing. So there's a career life cycle, and your needs change depending on where you are in your career. I believe there's 4 stages of a career. I've called them plant, root, grow, and harvest. And typically, now these aren't etched in stone, but typically, those 4 stages correspond with your age. Between 22 and 32, you're planting yourself. You're figuring out where you're going to go. You get embedded in a career choice. Then there's a number of things that we can do within that to ensure that you've got yourself planted the right way and you've got the right career nutrients within that. Knowing yourself, I like to use the analogy of buying something. If you're going to go on a vacation, you're going to research the hotels you're going to stay at. I mean, Lord, you wouldn't want to spend all that money, go to 2 weeks somewhere and have a crappy experience in a hotel. Think about the last time you booked a vacation. Either you or your spouse probably put a lot of time into researching where you were going to go, the restaurants you were going to stay at, the hotels you were going to stay at, or restaurants you were going to stay at. That's where I eat a lot, I stay at restaurants. The restaurants you were going to eat at, the hotels you were going to stay at. But unfortunately, when it comes to career management, the same amount of time and effort isn't necessarily put in. You're all studious folks. You're in the accounting profession. You probably invested more time into this than a lot of people have. So maybe I've got the wrong audience here. But the amount of time that you spend buying a career, there's a couple different models that we can look at to approach this. I don't know if you're familiar with the hedgehog principle. The book Good to Great by Jim Collins, he introduced it in that book. And it's been adapted here from a career perspective. When you're identifying what it is that you want to do, you can look at what you love, what you're good at, and what pays well. And ideally, you want all 3 of those things to be operating in sync. If you're doing something you really love, and you might be good at it, you're going to be happy, but you're going to be poor, potentially. What you love and what pays well, in a lot of cases that's, unless of course you're Wayne Gretzky, right? Not everyone has the same level of talent that a Gretzky had. So this is one. I think this is a little bit simplistic, and I have another idea that I've come up with is how do you want to slice your pie? Now, where the lines are on this graph are going to be a little bit different. I think there's other things that we need to take a look at, like how long does it take to become an expert in your chosen field? What is the money potential? What kind of enjoyment could you get out of that? What are the risks and the sacrifices? What are the skills required and what are the values? When I was very early in my career, the first thing I ever wanted to be was a landscape architect. And I did a little bit of research into being a landscape architect. I still love landscaping now. I love the symmetry and the balance and the lighting requirements and the complexity that can go into creating something that grows into a thing of beauty over time. But I realized, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, I'm not great with numbers. And I don't know if you know any architects that suck at math. Their structures aren't all that beautiful. And while there's things that you could do to work through that, it wasn't a natural inclination for me. And so I looked at other options, going through some kind of unconsciously a process similar to this. So I think there's other things that you need to take a look at when you're evaluating what you're going to do. Number 3 is know the danger signs. I mentioned that there's a lot of dangerous information in social media, written in magazines. This is a quote from Eminem. Oh, wait, no way, you're kidding. He didn't just say what I think he did he? From the real Slim Shady. So some of the things that I'm going to say, you may kind of cock your head to the side and go, really? Let's start with the idea that you can be anything you want to be. Can you imagine Shaquille O'Neal as a jockey? Have you ever seen American Idol? Every year, someone comes on stage and they ask them the question, are you the next American Idol? And almost without hesitation, everybody says, yes, I am the next American Idol. And then they open their mouth, and oh boy, they're horrible. And then you've got Randy Jackson covering his head with a towel. You've got Paula burying her head, looking at the floor, and Simon's just going, what the heck is going on? There needs to be some realism in terms of what the capabilities are, and so the processes that we go through in terms of the objectives that we're working in. Now, I am all for positivity, motivation, and a great attitude, but it does need to be embedded in the reality of your situation. The next, and probably the most dangerous piece of advice, and I'm going to say just don't do it, is the whole idea of you need to follow your passion. Oy, oy, oy. This is a big one. There's a book, has anyone heard of Cal Newport? He wrote a book in 2012 called So Good They Can't Ignore You: Why Skills Trump Passion in the Quest for Work You Love. And the whole premise of the book is that trying to match your job to a pre-existing passion rarely works. Passion comes after you put in the hard work to become excellent. And one of the things that just blew my hair back was an article he wrote in HBR. Check this. I don't even know if you guys knew this existed. There's something on Google called the Google Ngram Viewer. Has anyone heard of this? You can take a word or a set of words. You've heard of it? Awesome. You can put a word or a set of words into Google Ngram Viewer, and it'll chug through 450 million books, articles, and writings on that phrase and how that phrase has been used. This is interesting. Look what happens when you put the words follow your passion in to this Ngram Viewer and the usage of it over time. For the first 20 years, barely at all. And then something happened in 1996, 1998, 2000, where that started to become a repeatable, and it's now become cliche. And it's not that we throw passion out completely, but be very careful how you use passion. So I want to share with you another story. I picked up the paper, a community paper, a couple weekends ago, and I flipped to the real estate section. And there was I kid you not, there was an entire page of ads from real estate agents, nothing against real estate agents. Every single ad on that page said they were passionate about real estate. So I asked the question, is everyone really passionate? I think passion could actually be a dangerous thing. I think the worst combination is someone who's no good at what they do and they're still passionate. I'd rather deal with somebody who isn't very passionate and they're really, really good at what they do, especially if they're selling my house. So Mike Rowe was the host of a show called Dirty Jobs. I'm going to have to doctor the microphone here again, but I want you to listen to what Mike Rowe has to say about passion and some of the interviews he did with entrepreneurs that ran companies from everything from pig farming to cleaning out sewer tanks.
A kind of debunking of platitudes and cliches, typically those successories that you see hanging in office buildings like this that say things like, follow your passion. And there's a picture of a rainbow and some and butterflies or some stuff. Yeah. I joked about that back in 2004 with a pig farmer on Dirty Jobs. And he said, listen, the thing about passion is you got to have it, but only a moron would follow it. Bring your passion with you in all things, but never, ever follow it.
Again, a lot better said than I was going to do, but that really stuck with me. I think it provides a good mental framework. So passion first is a poor strategy. It can work, but in a lot of cases it doesn't. Has anyone heard the story Acres of Diamonds? This thing's been around for literally 50, 60, 70 years. Has anyone heard the story? When I first heard this, it amazed me. I'm going to read it to you. It'll take me a couple minutes, but it really illustrates a point here that I think will leave something with you. The Acres of Diamonds story, a true one, is told of an American farmer who heard tales about other farmers who had made millions by discovering diamond mines. These tales so excited the farmer that he could hardly wait to sell his farm and go prospecting for diamonds himself. So he sold his farm, and he spent the rest of his life wandering the African continent, searching unsuccessfully for the gleaming gems that brought such high prices in the world markets. Finally, worn out in a fit of despondency, he threw himself into a river, and he drowned. Meanwhile, the man who had bought his farm happened to be crossing a small stream on the property one day, when suddenly there was a bright flash of blue and red light from the stream bottom. He bent down, picked up the stone. It was a good-sized stone, and admiring it, he brought it home and put it on his fireplace mantel as an interesting curiosity. Several weeks later, a visitor picked up the stone, looked at it closely, hefted it in his hand, and nearly fainted. He asked the farmer if he knew what he had found, and when the farmer said no, he thought it was a piece of crystal, the visitor told him he had found one of the largest diamonds ever discovered. The farmer, having trouble believing that, he told the man that his creek was full of such stones, not as big as the one on his mantle perhaps, but sprinkled generously throughout the creek bottom. The farm the first farmer had sold so that he might find a diamond mine turned out to be one of the most productive diamond mines on the entire African continent, the mines of Golconda. The first farmer had owned, free and clear, acres of diamonds, but he had sold them for practically nothing in order to look for them elsewhere. So the moral's clear. If the first farmer had only taken the time to study and prepare himself to learn what diamonds look like in the rough state and to thoroughly explore the property he had before looking elsewhere, all of his wildest dreams could have come true. The thing about this story that has so profoundly affected millions of people is the idea that each of us is, at this very moment, standing in the middle of our own acres of diamonds. If we had only had the wisdom and patience to intelligently and effectively explore the work in which we're now engaged. To explore ourselves, we would most likely find riches we seek, whether they be financial or intangible or both. Before you go running off to what you think are greener pastures, make sure that your own are not just as green or perhaps even greener. It has been said that if the other guy's pasture appears to be greener than ours, it's quite possible that it's getting better care. Besides, while you're looking at your other pastures, people are busy looking at yours. Take the time to stand off and look at your work as a stranger might ask. Why does he do it that way? Has he noticed how what he's doing might be capitalized upon or multiplied? If you're happy with things as they are, then by all means keep them that way. But there's great fun in finding diamonds hiding in ourselves and in our work if we ever get bored or find ourselves in a rut. A rut, remember, is really nothing more than a grave with the ends kicked out. Some of the most interesting businesses in the world grew out of an originally very small idea in a very small place. You might also ask yourself, how good am I at what I'm presently doing? Do you know all there is to know about your work? Would you call yourself a first-class professional at your work? How would your work stand up against others in your line of work? It takes imagination, curious imagination, to know that diamonds don't look like cut and polished diamonds in their rough state, nor does a pile of iron or look like stainless steel. To prospect your own acres of diamonds, develop a faculty we might call intelligent objectivity. The faculty to stand off and look at your work as a person from Mars might look at it. Within the framework of what your industry or profession does, Within the framework of what industry or profession does your job fall? Isn't it time for a refreshing change of some kind? How can the customer be given more value? Each morning, ask yourself, how can I increase my service today? There are better ways to do what you are presently doing. What are they? How will your work be performed 5 or 10 years from now? Everything in the world is in a state of evolution and improvement. Sure, there's risk involved. There's no growth of any kind without risk. We start running risks when we get out of bed in the morning. Risks are good for us. They bring the best out in us. They brighten the eye and get the mind cooking. If you feel like running away from it all once in a while, you're perfectly normal. If you stay and get rid of your problems by working your way through them, that's success. Start taking an hour a day with a legal pad and dissect your work. Take it apart and look at its constituent parts. There's opportunity there. That's your acre of diamonds. That profoundly affected me the first time I heard it, and is probably one of the reasons why in an industry that has almost 80% annual turnover, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I still find opportunities to improve what we do and examine our work. It's a lot of fun to do that, and I would encourage you to do the same thing.